Alright everybody, I wanted to show you the texture customization scene for the RPG Barbarian character. The whole point of this package is that you can get a huge amount of looks from the models provided. There are a lot of models, clothing options provided for the male and female figures, and you can modify the textures to get pretty much any look you want with any color combination you want. And of course mixing and matching the textures, or not the textures, the models themselves. So I wanted to quickly go through the two editor scripts that make all of this a lot easier than doing it by hand. If you're not familiar with my stuff, this is the texture creation scene that comes with the human package, the barbarian package. Each one of the bodies has its own material, but all these clothing options have materials as well. And each one, we'll take the boots for instance here, have a whole bunch of different settings you can change to change the entire look of the boots down here. And so if you enable texture modification, the hard leather on the boots here, you can just change the hue and up the saturation, up the lightness, change the contrast, and you can pretty much create any kind of look you want from these boots. One of my favorite things is to add the overlay colors on top, and if you take down the saturation a little bit, you'll see that. So you can create really easily a lot of different looks. So I want to be able to do that for just one or two sections and have it copy all the way over. So I created this copy this to that controller, and we're going to start by just changing the barbute helmet. So if we look at the material for the barbute helmet up here, we see that it has the metal helmet, metal inside, and metal bolts sections, as well as these environment sections. First thing I'm going to do is enable texture modification. That allows these three top settings to be changed. I am going to add an overlay blend to the model and maybe make it a like a blue look, and I can change the roughness to make it more reflective. So that's pretty good there. I like that look. So I'm going to just stick with this for now, just to keep it quick. There's a lot more you could do, of course, if you keep playing around with it. I'm not going to touch the insides or the bolts. I want those to be the same changes, and so we're going to leave those alone for now. I am, however, going to add some surface dirt damage as well. Enable that. It's only going to apply to the metal, and to see the damage, to make it a little easier to see, we can see a little change there, but if you bring up the lightness, you can really see where the damage hits right there. So I'm going to bring the lightness down a little bit, so right there. I'm going to make the roughness even more rough so that the damaged parts reflect a little bit more sunlight and other lights than the undamaged parts. And if we bring up the roughness of the undamaged parts, you can really see that effect right there. So we'll leave that so you can see the effect on all the pieces. So once you have the look you like, I've preset these, copy this to that controllers. I'm actually going to redo this first one for you so you can see how to set it up yourself. Create any new object in the scene and add this, copy this to that script on top. The instructions are up here, but the first thing we're going to do is talk about the option. I'm going to exclude the main and environment for this one because this one is just going to copy the metal from the helmet to the other two sections of the barbute model. So I'm going to deselect those so that we don't change the main or the environment. The main is right now just that setting, whether we enable texture modification, and the environment is all the dirt and damage options that you saw as well. So we're going to add a procedural material as the source, and we're going to add that, and then we're going to also add the same one as the target. That will auto-populate this list here, and the list will show two things. It will show the source materials. If you have more than one source, you'll be able to choose between them, and this will populate the options you have based on the materials options that we've exposed in the inspector. So for this, we're going to choose the metal helmet, and then this will copy to your target, in this case Barbarian Barbute, to these sections. So I don't want to copy to metal, which will copy to all three of those. Instead, I want to copy metal helmet to metal inside and metal bolts. So I'm going to change this to metal helmet and metal helmet. Now when I click this button, the bolts and the inside will end up changing. You might not see the actual bolts change here because of the damage settings we have. However, if we go back into the Barbarian Barbute and bring up the metal helmet, we see that custom overlay, and we see the same one here for the bolts and the insides. So that's the simple version. This is a much more complex version. I've titled it Barbute Main Metal Environment to Everything, and if you look at the list here, it's going to be copying from the Barbarian Barbute, the main to the main of all these sections, the boots, bracers, quarter, dagger, folds, etc., and as well as the environment. Those are two global things, so you don't get to choose sections for those because the environment will always copy the environment, and main will always copy the main, but you can choose which one of the source options you have for other sections, and in this case we've got set to metal helmet, and that will be to the metal section of all of these materials. Now, just like the rest of these, I've prefaced the other materials with multiple prefixes. So we've got the metal helmet, metal insides, metal bolts. If I had just selected metal as the target material, then all three of these will be affected at once. So in reality, there's actually a whole lot of options being affected here. When I click copy all actions, it will take a minute for Unity to finish updating, because it's actually updating well, a few hundred or thousand options. It's 19 fields, I believe, per section, and there are over 100 sections for sure. So, alright, so now you can see the blue metal with the same damage on all of the metal parts. And now let's start with the next section. I've got the boots, leather, hard, and soft to everything. So if you look at the boots, we've already done the metal part, so we're only going to focus on the leather hard and leather soft. So let's go ahead and change the harder leather of the boots. We'll do the same with the soft metal, something similar. And once we're done with those two, alright, I had forgotten to change these to the specific hard boots and soft straps. For the source materials, you don't want to use the helper prefaces. You want to use the exact specific option or group. Alright, now that Unity's updated the leather options, we can go on to the next one, which is the cloth from the tasset on the skirt to everything else. So the skirt right here has this cloth tasset, and that's right here. So let's go ahead and adjust that as well. And there's only a few cloth parts, and so I'm just going to bring up the lightness a little bit to make it white, and we'll copy that over. Then we'll copy the boots environment to the male body environment, and I'm going to add one more thing here, and that's I'm going to copy the boots also to the other boots, because I realized that I forgot to copy the soft leather of the boots to the rest of the boots. And so when I add a new target, it's going to rebuild this entire list, which includes rebuilding the stuff that I previously deleted. So I'm going to delete these again, the 3 sections there, because I only want to copy the main, and I really only want to copy the surface dirt on the boots to the surface dirt on the skin. And for the boots down here, I don't want any of the environment or the main. In fact, I only want to keep the leather soft boot flaps, and we're going to copy the soft straps from that. And the hard soles, we're going to copy the hard boots for that. So let's go ahead and copy those over. Alright, so the boots updated, and the skin has updated as well. That's really dirty, and so we're going to adjust that on the human character. So let's go open the human skin. This is going to be for the human male body. So we're going into the surface dirt here, and we're going to make sure the roughness is high so that it's not shiny. We'll bring down the contrast and the amount a lot. We want them to be dirty, but not too dirty. Alright, and now we're going to also change the skin tone of the character, because we have a copy of this to that for the male skin, nipples and nails here. So let's just change that a little bit. The skin is a pretty subtle changes, do a lot here. The nails I actually like as is, so I'm going to leave the nails as they are. Alright, and let's copy this over. Again, Unity will update the materials and we'll see that reflected. Okay, so there we go. So now we have a completely modified look, and we can do one more thing. Now that we've easily modified everything via the copy this to that controller, you can go in and you can still customize things specifically. I like to select the materials in the project view so that I don't see the wire mesh over here. You'll notice the spalter has all these rings inside, and there's options in the material for the outer plate, outer ring plate, and inner ring. And so each one of these can be modified as well. We've set them to be all the same. Let's go ahead and make some modifications to them so that we get a little more of a difference in the metal look here. Alright, so now it has a different looks, and you can see all the circles. You can do that to all of the parts. I like to copy everything over using the copy this to that controllers before I do any of the specific looks, only because it's just much more efficient. One thing to note is once you do change the looks, if you run the copy this to that controller again, it will replace your changes. So it is important to do the specific looks only at the very end of the workflow. Now that I've got this unique look, I want to export it for use in Unity during game play, during the runtime. And so I've got another tool here called the Mass Exporter. So this option can also be called via the window menu, export material option, and I like to dock this. And you can bring a material into this option here, select your options, and export just a single material. But for this, since we've got all these materials, I just want to export them all at once. So in the end, they're going to end up in this exported materials folder. And so I'm going to give this a group name, and we're going to call this maybe a light blue demo barbarian, or maybe we'll put barbarian at the front. And I am going to remove the emissive and the height options because I don't use those maps. And I'm going to set the normal map mode to normal map. If I was going to export base materials for use in my system that won't be used directly in the game, then I would want to decheck that so that they're not set to the more normal map mode. If merge with group was set, then if I export two things with the same group name, they'd end up being put under the same folder in the exported materials. That's helpful if you're making many versions of a single option, like many different boot looks, or maybe a damaged and a new version of the boot looks that you're going to transition between during your gameplay. If you want to copy the settings or maps from a previous export, type in the previous group name right here. That's helpful if you have changes in only color and you don't have any changes in the roughness or the ambient occlusion. You can save RAM space and disk space by using the same maps from multiple materials and only changing the materials that you need to change. But if you leave that blank, then nothing will happen. So this will take a while. I'm going to click the export materials now, and Unity will export those to my disk and start importing them into Unity and running all the things we have here. So I'm going to go make myself a drink or have a snack or something. Alright, now that Unity is done importing everything, go into the export materials here. You'll find a new folder called Barbarian Light Blue Demo, and inside you've got all the texture sets for the various parts, materials to go along with them, fully populated with the maps, 1% ready to be used inside the game engine. So now, with these two scripts combined, you can actually make well, any number of looks that you want with the models available, and export them, well, within, I don't know, probably 15-20 minutes. You can get a completely customized look, and a look that matches the game you're making and exactly what you want to make. So I hope you enjoy using these tools. Let me know if I can do anything to make them even better and more efficient. Efficiency is key because customizing these textures is the whole point. Really being able to get all these cool looks from one base material design. And if you need anything else, just let me know on the forums.